Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the world's first cordless heat gun is on shelves now. I bought mine at Home Depot on November 13th, 2017, and here is my review of my very own M18 heat gun. What I did not know is whether or not the gun came with any of the accessories, and it does not. You have to buy those separately. And yes, it does fit. I did not know if it would, but it does. So these tips are a little bit expensive, and it's because they're made out of stainless steel, and I'm testing it with a magnet. Stainless steel is non-magnetic. And I'll be showing these tips a little bit later on to see, if they're worth it. And, this reducing nozzle is magnetic, so I don't know how much stainless steel is in it. The nozzle on the heat gun itself is definitely stainless. But this one, I don't know. That one might have some iron in it. This heat gun does not vary the heat in any way. It's on or off. It doesn't have any kind of an adjustment for the airflow on the back like some heat guns do. You just vary the temperature with distance. Well, this is probably how I'll end up using the ladder hook, as long as I'm careful about not letting the hot nozzle burn a hole in my pants or anything else. Should be fine. It's kind of handy to have that. I like it. What about the output? Does it really output 875 degrees Fahrenheit? I decided to check the output with my wireless temp gun, but I had a feeling the readings were a little low, so I also checked it with a contact sensor. The contact sensor is in Celsius in the lower left, and then the temp gun LCD is flashing the real-time value in Fahrenheit. It's a little low compared to the reading in Celsius, and the maximum is in the small print on the LCD on the Milwaukee wireless temp gun. And if you do the conversion from Celsius to Fahrenheit, the contact sensor is reading a higher temperature than the temp gun is. At the 3-minute mark, I stopped, and it seemed to peak out at about 667 degrees at the 3-minute mark. Shortly after the 3-minute mark, I stopped and observed how quickly or slowly it cools off. So beware of the hot nozzle after you use it. So right now what you're watching is the cooling off, and I ran this out to 10 minutes and sped it up. So 875 degrees Fahrenheit seems like a pretty high claim. I think 600 to 700 degrees is a more realistic expectation of output, and it's going to take about 3 minutes to get up to close to 700 degrees. But I suppose deep inside the tremie pipes, so the right next to the preamulated famulite marsal veins and right inside of the turbo encabulator, it probably might be 875 degrees Fahrenheit. But in the real world where the air comes out, it's 600 to 700 degrees Fahrenheit. And if you don't know how much hot air a turbo encabulator produces, Google it. Turbo encabulator, Rockwell, version 1. I decided to try to desolder a surface mount component off of an old circuit board. And after about 4 minutes, it did get hot enough, and it did finally release one of the small passives off of the circuit board. So it did reflow the solder, and it did desolder it, but it took a long time. It was probably a struggle for this heat gun. For comparison, I got out my cheap Harbor Freight 1500 watt heat gun just to see if that could reflow or desolder any better than the Milwaukee, and yeah, it did. It took about 1 minute, and it did finally desolder a component. But this was just kind of just for comparison and curiosity. I still like the Milwaukee heat gun better. Okay, for something more practical, I got out some 1/2 inch Schedule 40 PVC just to see if I could heat it up enough to put a bend in it, because it takes a fair bit of heat to heat up Schedule 40 and get a bend in it, and it did. Took took about 2.5 to 3 minutes, and it got up to temp, and it actually made a nice bend in that PVC. So what about battery life? Well, this heat gun runs down a 9 amp hour M18 battery pretty fast. After 3 minutes, it's 1 notch down. In another video I watched about this M18 heat gun, somebody had mentioned that it might be good for removing vinyl graphics or stickers. I don't know if they actually meant stickers, but I thought, hey, I would try it because I wanted to get these stickers off of this saw. And it seemed to kind of work against me. It reactivated the adhesive and seemed to make the adhesive stick more. But when I got into a situation like this where I couldn't get an edge, it did definitely help me to get an edge where I could start to peel back the sticker. So it may or may not be well suited for this application. Judge for yourself. Next, I wanted to try this on some old plexiglass. I could not get the paper film off, and I tried heat on the paper film, and that also seemed to work against me. It seemed to reactivate it or make it stick harder. But then I thought, hey, can I clear up a smoky edge on plexiglass? And I don't know if I would have stuck with it longer, it might have worked, but it didn't work. But it does work really nicely for putting a bend in thin acrylic, and this is an application I'll probably definitely use this for again. The nozzles. So here we see our first example of an improved application. The nozzle definitely helped me get a cleaner bend on the plexiglass. And it also helped reduce burning because it wasn't so concentrated. And this is the acrylic that I used. So the other thing I was curious about was whether or not I could do the 3M film, heat shrink film on windows. If you live in the north and it gets cold, you know what this stuff is. You put it on windows. And without the nozzle, you get hot spots. You can still do it. It does a nice job. This is a really good application for this heat gun. And the nozzles definitely help out. And when I'm done with this example, I will put on one of the fan tip nozzles and show you how much better it does perform with the nozzle kit. And I put this stuff on my windows in my house, and I'll definitely be using this nozzle and using this tool to do that job instead of moving around cords and all of that nonsense every time I do this every year. And the nozzle, you can see, just made this so much nicer, and it did a really good job. This tool is really well suited for that application. Okay, so heat shrink. Yep, I wanted the hook deflector for the heat shrink, and it definitely does help, I think. And it also helps protect whatever you might have behind the hook deflector so that you're not heating everything up that you're aiming at. I'll definitely be using the hook deflector nozzle to do heat shrink, and this will probably be the most used application that I have for this heat gun.
Something that we have to deal with up here in the north fairly often is frozen locks, and I think this would be a perfect application for a lock that's been sitting out on a gate and it's rusted over and iced up and you can't get to a corded heat gun.
I was curious about how well this would work for arts and crafts applications. I tried embossing with it, and I thought maybe it would be too harsh because it's industrial and the temperature claims were really high, but I thought, you know what, the temperature might be just right in the right range for this kind of an application, and it does not burn the paper, at least not with this fan tip on it. I did also try it without that fan nozzle, and it worked both ways. It didn't burn the paper. You just, you control the amount of heat with the distance away from the paper. But it worked for embossing. It did curl the paper. The paper may have had some moisture. I'm not sure, but it worked great for arts and crafts, scrapbooking, embossing. One of the other applications that I wanted to try, but I don't really have a way to do that, is that YouTuber Bleeping Jeep actually used a heat gun on some old gray faded black plastic bodywork, and it turned it shiny black. I was very curious about that and wanted to try it, but I don't have anything that has that kind of gray faded black plastic. And you can watch the other YouTube videos about frying eggs and toasting toast and all that, but this is my review. I'm really happy with this heat gun. I like it. Get the nozzle kit, and thanks for watching.